How are you doing, everybody? Welcome back into the SFS channel. In this video, we'll be continuing our discussion of rest of season fantasy football rankings here for the 2022 year. In this episode, I'll be talking about the tight end spot and breaking down my top 24 and a ranked tier list for you guys, of course, in today's video. So if you're new around here, make sure to drop down, smash that subscribe button, and turn the bell on so you're never late for a new piece of content. I've got other videos out here in the rest of season series. Quarterbacks, running backs, and receivers are all live right now as well, in addition to week 5 analysis and advice as well that can be found in a playlist on our channel. So again, subscribe, check all that stuff out, and let's dive into today's video. All right, so as we get through today's episode, you can see here we have a lot of tiers with a lot of different designations. First and foremost, I'm just going to quickly graze through these before we start putting players up on the board. I think today's episode will be pretty short, or at least efficient, let's put it that way. I expect to be pretty swift moving through this, but we've got our elite tight end tier. These are going to be the best of the best. It's pretty obvious who's going in that group. The 1A tier is actually going to be a one-man category where I've designated to a player that I still have a pretty positive outlook for here. The 1B tier is going to be players that I think are really solid starters. The reliable tight end ones here are going to be players that I think are, on the cusp of being in the top 12 every single week here, but don't necessarily have the opportunity to be in that elite group all that often. The high upside tight end ones, of course, the definition's in the title. It's going to be your boom bust group here in terms of guys that have a really nice ceiling, but the floor, of course, for this position is so shaky. Fringe starter, again, maybe if you're weak at the position, you faded the group in the drafts, you've got one of these guys you picked up off the waiver wire that's certainly giving you a chance in that category, but you're still not necessarily sure. High tight end twos or high-end tight end twos, those are going to be your guys that, again, you'd prefer not to be starting them. Streamers, players you can pick up off the waiver in a given instance here and start them. And then the waiver wire question mark category are guys that maybe aren't even worth rostering at this point and would be desperation streams. So with that being said, hopefully that makes sense to you guys. Let's dive in. All right, for those of you looking for numeric rankings today, simply go left to right in each tier. And as we make our way down the tiers list, obviously progress that way. So starting from the top here, Mark Andrews is my tight end 1 for the rest of this season. He is currently the tight end 2 in PPR scoring. However, this is the top passing option in this Baltimore Ravens offense. He's superior to Rashad Bateman or any other pass catchers they have here. And this is a guy with 36 targets through 4 games, averaging 9 targets per game at this particular position is elite level territory. This is a high level red zone weapon as well. And Lamar Jackson's, again, preferred choice in the passing game here. So feeling really good about that. Travis Kelce, number 2 here. You could make the argument for Travis to be your tight end 1 for the rest of the year. In terms of overall passing ability, sure, Patrick Mahomes being the lead target in his offense may be a more valuable role to play here. Again, another player who's kind of a do-it-all type guy, really good in space, can be a safety blanket in the middle of the field, phenomenal after the catch, can score touchdowns as well. The little thing that just kind of trends me towards Mark Andrews here is the fact that you've got kind of a I'm not going to disrespect Travis Kelce here and say that he has kind of a tight end by committee system, but they are feeding, because that's certainly not the case, but they are feeding other guys opportunities and valuable spots in the field. Now, last week, take it for what it's worth. It was a blowout game against Tampa Bay for much of that contest, and I'm not going to read too much into Noah Gray taking a snap from under center and Jody Fortson getting snaps in there as well, but they're kind of just airing the ball out to whoever they want to. And while Travis, again, is the alpha in this offense, not just, the tight end room or the receiver core, the overall Kansas City Chiefs offense, I just feel a little bit more comfortable with Mark Andrews per se. Now, the margin is literally like that big. You can hardly see it. It's thinner than a piece of paper here, but just very, very nitpicky stuff for me here to really separate and differentiate between these two players. They are the class of the tight end position, and it isn't particularly close. Last couple of notes here on Travis Kelce. He does have 7 or more targets in every game this season, and he's got 3 touchdowns in 4 games here. Mahomes, of course, being the number 1 target, or excuse me, the number 1 quarterback in terms of being able to feed other players in this offense. So super comfortable about that. Let's dive into the next tier here. All right, Darren Waller here is my 1A tight end category for now for the rest of this fantasy season. Now, the last couple of weeks haven't been too pretty. He's had back-to-back 2-in-a-row games with less than 4 fantasy points and half PPR scoring. However, the looks he's been getting have been encouraging to me. He's getting a lot of opportunities in the red zone. I feel like every time Red Zone pans over, like this being the streaming service NFL Red Zone on Sunday afternoons, pans to the Raider game, I feel like I'm watching Darren Waller get a target in the end zone. Basically, a 6'6" monster who is super athletic for a player at this position, and he's getting those opportunities. So went crazy earlier on in the season, hasn't been as nice as of late here, has no double-digit target games this year, which is kind of somewhat of a fantasy turnoff here, but it is a tight end position. He's no longer the true alpha in his offense because you've got Devontae Adams there, but I do think that presence of Devontae helps lighten up his coverage load in the red area and makes things a bit easier on him for those scoring chances. So some of you guys might disagree with this take here. I personally am not like the biggest Darren Waller fan in the world, but I do see somewhat of a drop-off here within the next two players, which we're going to dive into right now in the 1B tier. All right, so my rest of season tight ends 4 and 5 are Dallas Goddard of the Eagles and Kyle Pitts of the Atlanta Falcons. Now, I think this is also going to be somewhat of a hot topic here. A lot of you are probably not even willing to put Kyle Pitts in your top 7 or 8. I am still going to stick with things here. Kyle Pitts had his breakout and really started prevailing last season from weeks 5 and beyond. He also struggled the first month of the year last season. So hopefully that takes a trend in the right direction. Now, he is out here for week 5. This video is coming your way on Saturday morning. I'm filming it Friday evening. So put that context behind that here. I do factor that into this. And, if you want to argue he's going to miss a game, knock him down a few pegs, sure, fine, whatever. But this is a player who still is so talented. I mean, the talent he has at this position is just unmatched among any other player, and I get it. He's a player at the mercy of Marcus Mariota and an Arthur Smith-led offense. I see the issues here and the struggles, and I see all of the reasons why he's set up to fail. However, that talent piece and the fact that I'm still clinging on, here, to hope from those Delaney Walker seasons in Tennessee, I know Marcus Mariota has it in him to produce tight end 1 or top 5 tight end, whatever you want to call it, level production to one of the most historically athletic unicorns at this position in NFL history. So we literally just skipped over Dallas Goddard there. Let's back up a second here. Started talking some Kyle Pitts pretty early. But for Dallas Goddard, this has been a guy who's had a phenomenal floor value to start this season. Now, he only has 20 targets on the year, so he's averaging 5 per game. I think he's actually going to pop off and go completely nuts against Arizona this week. That's allowing about 20 fantasy points per game to the tight end position on the other side of the field. But for Goddard, he's getting the really nice, wide-open RPO reads from Jalen Hurts. He has other weapons in this offense to kind of divert attention away from him. He's been making the most of his playmaking opportunities for this team, so I'm happy to see that happening here and continuing going forward. Now, again, I do expect his value to probably hit a season high this week when I think he'll just totally go nuts all over Arizona's defense. And back to Kyle Pitts here. Again, I'll leave you with this. It's optimism here. I get the production hasn't matched up to this assessment of him so far, but I'm not ready to knock him down the pendulum here or the pecking order because of the fact that we've got 3 terrible games. He's actually had 3 contests with 3 fantasy points or lower. He needs more opportunities, plain and simple. And if he doesn't get that in my next edition of this video, you'll see him much lower on the list. But for now, it is still relatively early this season, and I'm going to continue being hopeful for what he can hopefully do here in the coming weeks of this season. All right, into the reliable tight end 1s tier. Now, some of you guys may feel after seeing these 2 players below, especially Kyle Pitts, this is the one thing where, again, I do get that it's a little bit of a hot take there to still have Kyle Pitts that high, because plain and simple, he has not been as good as Zach Ertz or Tyler Higbee to this point in the season. But I do feel that over the course of the rest of this year, things will start to prevail for Kyle Pitts. So I'll be done talking about him with that. And if you disagree with that take, it's totally fine in my book. I understand your guys' arguments, but I'm holding out optimism for him and a high level of optimism at that, still having him ranked in my top 5 here. For Zach Ertz, it has been very, very high floor play. You're getting a guy who has 2 double-digit target performances. He's the safety blanket in the middle of the field for Kyler Murray right now. He's the guy that's going out there and giving you that reliability where Hollywood Brown has been kind of had to be introduced into this short and intermediate passing game here, whereas we think of him typically more as a deep threat. Until DeAndre Hopkins comes back, Ertz is such a focal point of this offense. Now, I think he'll sustain production and continue to be a reliable player when that happens. However, he is clearly, his upside, I would argue, is higher with Hopkins out of the lineup. It just gives him more volume on a per-game basis and more chances to make plays. But for Zach Ertz, if you're rolling with him as your top tight end the rest of the season, you're in a good spot, and it's not necessarily something I'd be concerned about moving forward. And then for Tyler Higbee, This has been one of the stories of this NFL season. He's got 3 9+ target games this year, 2 of those being double-digit target games, and he's played 93% or more of every snap on the football field each week. So he's going out there and balling out. They've been using him in a high volume underneath and RPO reads, checkdowns, all that great stuff. And that's really not great stuff, but the volume is great in itself. You're getting a player that is just such a volume target for Matthew Stafford underneath right now. It's giving him all the production he needs. And when other players of the position group aren't getting this level of opportunity and work in their offenses, it sets Tyler Higbee apart. So he's not, as athletic as Kyle Pitts or Darren Waller, and he's just playing as a possession tight end right now. This offense needs playmakers so bad. Until they get a Van Jefferson or a vertical weapon that can start distributing targets in other areas of the football field, Higbee's going to keep getting looks and continue to do really, really impressive things here. So for Tyler Higbee and Zach Ertz, again, the reliable tight end 1 tier, and my 6th and 7th ranked tight end at this current point in time. So despite the fact that I have them as tier 4 players, it's really not as bad as that would typically be, because I think that there's such incremental drop off at a very quick rate with this position group. All right, here we go with the high upside tight ends 1 category. Now, these are names that I don't necessarily have full-fledged confidence in every single week. However, their talent speaks for itself. These are guys that can go out there and be, honestly, a top 3, or in, I'd say the case of 2 of these players, maybe even the top tight end overall in a given per week basis. Now, starting with George Kittle, missed the first 2 games of the season here. Some of you may feel that at face value, this is a bit of disrespect. I would tend to disagree here based off of the current situation and infrastructure you're playing with. I didn't like George Kittle in draft season, because of health concerns. He plays so physical. It's not even his fault of being an injury-prone player. Just the nature of the game and the style he plays in this sport gets you worn down and your body beat up quicker. Now, with that said, again, missing the first 2 games of this season. A guy who comes in the next 2 weeks. He's been healthy in weeks 3 and 4 here and has just 9 targets in 2 games. Now, it's not terrible for the tight end position, but you would like to see more. This is a guy we thought of at one time as the best tight end in football and an alpha in this offense, and that's just not the case anymore. This offense runs through Deebo Samuel, and the most important thing I have to note here is the fact that first and foremost, he's basically playing left tackle right now, and that's a joke to an extent. However, you do have Trent Williams out of the lineup, and they have been using him a lot more in protection and a lot more as a blocking asset than they have been putting him out and deploying him to run passes. Now, George Kittle might be fine with that. He might be a guy who is like, hey, I like beating people up and playing football and getting my nose dirty and just rolling around on the floor and pancaking guys. I mean, if you literally watch film, this guy torpedoes himself at linebackers and just lays them out clean. So this is a dude's dude and a hell of a football player. But at this point in time, he might be a better football player than an actual fantasy football player. So just keep that in mind here. Again, George Kittle's an awesome player. I've said this before. If I was to start an NFL team and I got a guy healthy for 17 games to put in my lineup, I'm probably picking George Kittle, the best well-rounded player, and after the catch is a completely dominant asset. So for Kittle, it's just a lack of opportunities and the role that they're asking him to play for this offense right now. That's a bit concerning for me. Pat Freiermuth here, this is what I love to see, and this is a reason that Pat could see himself raise up my tiers here in coming weeks. He has 30 targets in 4 games right now, so a very impressive clip, averaging, over 7 targets per game, 7.5 targets per contest here, and he's got 3 games of 10 or more fantasy points and half PPR scoring. So that great solid floor value on a week-to-week basis is phenomenal. That is exactly what you're looking for. The one question I have is quarterback play, and that comes down to Kenny Pickett. We'll learn more about this literally tomorrow. You're seeing this video Saturday morning. You might be watching it after Sunday, week 5 action. We'll probably have a good inkling as to at least how Kenny Pickett's going to do for a full 60-minute contest against a 14-point favorite Buffalo Bills team. So love Pat Freiermuth, the talent. I think that this is a guy who, you hear them say, a solid tight end can be a young quarterback's best friend. I truly believe that. The safety blanket over the middle type thing, the red zone asset, just having a larger body and frame to throw the rock to, and just the fact this is a strong, sure-handed possession tight end that is just a reliable target and a dependable option for Pickett in this offense. So love to see that stuff there. If you're giving me that high floor volume every single week of the season, he'll find himself in the reliable tight end 1 tier, because like we talked about with Tyler Higbee, that was essentially my analysis there. I just trust that usage a bit more until that situation changes with potentially more vertical weapons coming into play, again with a Van Jefferson, or if they can somehow replicate that with someone else. We'll see. All evolving things to consider throughout the course of the season. And then TJ Hawkinson, my tight end 10 for the rest of the year. Now again, not a popular take after last week. He scored 35 points on 12 targets. However, I will remind you that was without Amon-Ra St. Brown. If you look back to the week prior, Amon-Ra St. Brown got nicked up with an ankle, and after that, TJ Hawkinson starts going wild. So last week was literally the best matchup on paper, aside from Arizona, that a tight end could have this season. Seattle is also abysmal at guarding the tight end position. So I don't expect these things and these trends to continue with ARSB out there. So I'm going to be a little bit more cautious and a little bit more hesitant, just like I said with George Kittle. I think Hawkinson's a bit of a better NFL football player than he is a fantasy football player, so I will pump the brakes on him a little bit there. Let's jump into the fridge starters now. Here we've got David Njoku, Gerald Everett, and Dalton Schultz, our tight ends 11 through 13. Now, for Njoku, this is a bit more of an upside play down the course of this season. That's the reason that they're fringe starters. Their floor isn't great, and with Gerald Everett, unfortunately, I have some, not bad news per se, but I think that there is a little bit of a realism in terms of just observing his production so far through a realistic lens of what he's going to continue doing this season, but we'll get to that in a second. For Njoku, this is a player I truly believe has elite athleticism and talent at the tight end position. He's just never had the situational opportunity to continue providing top 12 numbers on a week-to-week basis. Now, I loved him coming into this season because of the potential for Deshaun Watson for this team. However, we still have to wait until week 12 for that. So we're managing our expectations as him being a fringe starter from here on out until that point in time. And even so, Deshaun's going to have some rust and some inevitable struggles, I would assume here, when he first takes the field this season. So I like him right now. We saw him make big plays against Pittsburgh. Was that the Thursday night game in week 4? If not, that was week 3. I'm drawing a blank right now. But you've got a guy who was a solid playmaker. It must have been 2 weeks ago, week 3, because he just played in week 4 again and did okay. Cleveland this past week. Who the heck did they play? Was it Atlanta? Yes, it was Atlanta. And then you just, okay, so you've got yourself a solid player regardless, a guy who doesn't have the best floor in the world. We saw that the first 2 weeks of the year where he wasn't really that viable of an option. So I'm looking forward to what Njoku can do the rest of this season. I think he's a better play towards the end of the year. He might finish the season having his best contest of the year. Of course, that's kind of what you like to see here. And he has 17 targets in his last 2 games combined, so you're talking about a guy who is going north of that 8 target per game marker, 8.5 targets per game the last 2 weeks. So like to see that stuff. His stock is trending up right now. Gerald Everett here, this is a nice player. He's been producing very well. But the thing I want to talk through here is that we haven't had Keenan Allen for 3.5 games of football. His hamstring issue came into effect very early in the season. Looks like he's going to miss a 4th straight game here. At least that's the impression I'm getting based off of the missed practice time up until now on Friday evening again, like I've been talking about. So for Gerald Everett here, super athletic, kind of a similar situation to David Njoku, honestly. A super athletic player, a competent playmaker, but when your number 1 volume receiver is not on the field, someone else has to step up and the team overall has to absorb those targets. So the fact that you're not seeing Gerald Everett do these things, or that we haven't had the opportunity, let's just put it that way, to see him do these things with Allen on the field is a little bit scary, because you could see that drop off. You could see a guy who is necessarily a product of his environment right now. I've liked him as a talent and admired his play style for a while here, but there is, a realistic factor to this at the end of the day that I do think we have to prepare ourselves for some level of drop-off with Allen's return eventually. And then Dalton Schultz, the offensive identity and PCL issues here are the main problems. I had Dalton as a top 5 tight end coming into this year, and then Dak goes down, and then Dalton hurts his knee. I think that this is just going to be a grave situation of a middling tight end for the rest of the year. I don't think with Cooper Rush we can really have too high of expectations for Schultz in lineups this year. And then maybe when Dak comes back, if maybe his PCL can get a little bit better and a little bit healthier and not have the same problems here, then we could be looking at something. But for now, I don't see a super high ceiling, again, especially with Cooper Rush at the quarterback position for this team. And then, like I said, when Dak comes back, we saw how the thumb impacted Russell Wilson last year. How will the thumb impact Dak Prescott this season? hand issues, gripping problems with the football, that's a real thing here. So I'm going to be cautiously optimistic with Schultz in my evaluation of him going forward here. Maybe not someone that I think is even, we have him as a fringe starter. With that title comes along with the fact that you're probably going to find yourself benching him in certain situations. I've got a league where I'm literally benching him for like streaming options at times because right now I just don't trust him. But overall, this assessment is hoping things get better as the year progresses, which they may not. All right, so here's the high-end tight end twos category. Hayden Hurst, Dawson Knox, Tyler Conklin, and Irv Smith Jr. Now, these would be my preferred choices if I were to have to stream someone. We'll talk about the streamers tier here in just a second. Those are guys I don't necessarily think are even rostered on teams in the majority of fantasy leagues out there, but should you need someone for a pinch scenario, we've got guys out for this week, you could head that direction, and this is a in general thing, not necessarily for week 5 here. So Hayden Hurst for me, again, is a streaky tight end too. That's exactly what this category is. We saw him last week come out here and score a touchdown against Miami. He's a talented player, former first-round pick, has gotten 2 really bad breaks in his career, the first being that he was in the same draft class as Mark Andrews, the second being that he was the starting tight end for a season on a team that drafted Kyle Pitts the next year. So as a result, it's his 3rd team in his NFL career now. And look, this receiver group runs this offensive passing game. Hayden Hurst is not the focal point of this team. So there's only so much you can do. You're going to need end zone or end zone trips or extreme efficiency here. If you don't get that, he's just not going to produce. Dawson Knox is out week 5 here based on what I just saw from Adam Schefter a few minutes ago. He has not scored over 6 points this season, which really sucks. However, you do still have a tight end tied to Josh Allen. It looks like we've honestly reverted back to 2020 Dawson Knox. 2021 seems so long ago that we were seeing him pop in the end zone left and right. Tyler Conklin here's got 7+ targets each game, weeks 1 through 3 this season. He dropped down to 5 with the return of Zach Wilson in week 4 here, but still a guy who has proven to be at least a semi-focal point of this offensive passing attack. Now, this offense, again, most offenses run through their receiving core. Garrett Wilson, Corey Davis, Elijah Moore, still all the preferred options. Heck, even Breece Hall is getting a high volume of work out of the backfield as well in the passing game. But Conklin's a good guy in the red zone. He's a large body, hard to tackle in space. It brings utility to this team. So if Zach prefers to not throw the tight end as much, his ranking and assessment will drop here. But for now, we've seen some impressive things from him so far this year. And then Irv Smith Jr., really talented player, love his athleticism, but a bit of an undersized tight end. And, like we've been saying here over and over again, he is a tertiary option at best in this team's passing game. They are not looking to create a game plan around Irv Smith in any given contest this year. You've got a guy who is playing alongside Justin Jefferson, Dalvin Cook, Adam Thielen. Like, at best, he is their 4th best playmaker on the field at a given time. So, it's a struggle for opportunities. When he gets them, they might be there and he might score some nice points. He's had some blunders, some drops, some issues this far in the season, but not stuff that I really worry about too much here. Let's dive into the streamer category. All right, our streamer tight ends here. These are plain and simple, not guys that are super reliable on a weekly basis. Logan Thomas has some talent. He's averaging 5 targets a game right now, and it is plain and simple, though, just a touchdown-dependent tight end 2 option. This is a guy with 3, not 1, not 2, but 3 really good wide receivers, Curtis Samuel, Terry McLaurin, and Jahan Dotson in his offense. Now, potential streamer here for week 5. We've got no Jahan Dotson. I don't know how big of an impact his 5 targets lost are going to be on Logan Thomas's fantasy value, but in the red zone, he's a touchdown scoring threat here, and he has played in a variety of Commanders' offenses and found some success at moderate levels. Of course, 2020, his breakout year, appeared to be the best season of his career and probably will be going forward. So Robert Tonyan going forward to the 19th overall tight end position for this season. Super touchdown dependent here. Robert Tonyan, absolutely, or it's officially Tunyon. Man, there's something with me being from the Midwest here, just pronouncing my own team, the Green Bay Packers, names wrong. I always say Romeo Dubs instead of Dobbs, Robert Tonyan, like onion instead of Tanyan. I guess I just get into habits here. Apologize about that. But anyways, so Tonyan is super touchdown dependent. We saw this in 2020. We talked through a lot of 2020 star tight ends here. But essentially, this is a player who is talented. Aaron Rodgers trusts him. He'll throw him the ball in the red zone at stretches and times here. But this hasn't been a super explosive firework offense like it was in 2020 when Tonyan was getting all these opportunities to score touchdowns. So plain and simple, with that not being the case, without an elite play action game in the red zone area, you're not going to see those numbers be nearly as high. He's got just 1 touchdown to start out this season. Evan Ingram here, the last number or name in this category, number 20 tight end overall. 4 targets are less in 3 out of 4 games. Not good to have 75% of your contests be low volume. He did have 1 8-target game, but he's just not a reliable red zone weapon, not someone that's being involved at a high level because he's not one of the more big physical tight ends in the world. He's more of a run after catch and speed demon at this position group. But for me, I don't really trust him too much. I think that Jacksonville, just plain simple offensively, has other options they're looking to go to, from Christian Kirk to Zay Jones to just the run game. So Ingram's not someone I trust a ton here. Does have nice upside because he can make big plays, but not someone I also typically tight ends you'd expect to have a better shot to score touchdowns than other players. Not so much for me with Evan Ingram. All right, then finally here, this waiver wire group. I'll scroll up a little bit just in case you guys can't see that. I'm not sure how the exact output is looking right now. Waiver wire question mark tier. I guess we could toss Alberto up on here. He comes within the next couple of rankings. That's not my top 24 that he made, but we'll toss him up there anyways. Hunter Henry, 21st tight end, 22nd being Mo Alley Cox, Mike Gesicki at 23rd, and Cole Kmet at 24th. Not too much analysis here. These guys have just really struggled to put up points productively this season. For Hunter Henry, he's got no touchdowns, 4 targets or less in every game, and he's only played 80% of the snap share or less in 3 out of 4 contests, that being a factor of Jonnu Smith being healthy this year, and them just having a variety of personnel on the field. So for Hunter Henry, super touchdown dependent. The touchdowns aren't coming, therefore bust numbers on a weekly basis. Mo Alley Cox right now, potentially could get supplanted by Jelani Woods by the end of the year. Now, the snap count percentages today do favor Mo Alley Cox by a healthy margin, but Jelani Woods looks like the better option. Neither of them really did too much on Thursday Night Football last night again, Friday episode. I'm recording this coming out on Saturday. So we just watched Thursday night fresh off of that game from last week. So for Mo Alley Cox, can be a red zone weapon, can score a touchdown and make his week. Same thing for Mike Gesicki here, 4 targets or less in every game this season. When you're playing with Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle, the opportunities and the target volume is just going to be sparse. And if you're not getting that work, that's going to be problematic. Cole Kmet here, 3 targets or less every game. Terrible offensive attack here, bad offensive line, bad passing attack. It's really just a talent thing, and he's not even that great of a talent. It's just like, well, he plays close to the quarterback at the line of scrimmage. He might score a touchdown if they throw a play action pass in that area of the field. Like, the tight end group gets so despairingly awful towards the end of these tiers lists. It's kind of painful to talk through these guys. And then Alberto, they run a tight end by committee style system. There are 3 tight end sets all the time with Denver. I'll be honest, I literally can't name their other 2 tight ends not named Greg Dulich. So and those are the guys in the field right now, by the way. So there's like an 82. He almost caught a touchdown pass, and I want to say an 83 as well. Like they just rotate guys in and out, and it's really not Alberto's show for the taking. So there you have it. Our top 24, really our top 25 tight ends. Actually, I might have Alberto as my 26th tight end, but he was in this tiers list somehow. So disregard that. But regardless, you guys, I appreciate your stopping by. Check out the quarterbacks episode, running backs, and wide receivers out as well, and I'll see you there. Peace out.